You're listening to Wicked Thoughts, a podcast by Flair Castro, founder of DashoContent. This show is dedicated to helping founders and professionals understand business trends, digital marketing, and how to be a better entrepreneur. In Season 6, we dive into a dash of AI in marketing, exploring how artificial intelligence is revolutionizing the marketing landscape. From automation to personalization, we'll uncover the impact of AI on marketing strategies and execution. Let's get into it in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Dash Ed and Wicked Thoughts webinar and podcast series. For Season 6, we are tackling AI in marketing. I am Flair Castro, your host, founder and CEO of DashoContent. Now, what is DashoContent? We are an AI marketing company. We are currently building Asia's first content subscription platform for marketing departments. And with this, we help marketing teams and startups supercharge their storytelling for the brands that they work on through content, code, and community. Now, what is Dash Ed? So Dash Ed here, it's our education arm, and Wicked Thoughts is my personal podcast. So we thought of combining both initiatives to champion AI in marketing right here in Southeast Asia and, of course, the Philippines. Now, without further delay, let me introduce our guest today to talk about content operations and deepfake and everything else about AI. We have the privilege of introducing our guest, the AI Messiah of the Philippines, Doc Ligot. Doc Ligot, he's a data analyst, software developer, and entrepreneur, and technologist, and he's an all-around tech rebel. We love rebels here at DashoContent. And he's also the founder of Zeralytics. He's passionate about using AI for social impact, and his work encompasses human rights, public health, and fighting disinformation through computational social science. Please join us in welcoming Doc Ligot. Welcome, Doc.
Hey, Flair, and thank you to the DashoContent team for having me here. Looking forward to our podcast.
We love having you at our events. We love having you, of course. I think this is the first time that we invited you on our podcast itself. So, Doc, if you remember, I think the first time we were able to collaborate together was last year during our DashCon roadshow. So, I guess I reached out to you, asked you for help to be our speaker, be our featured speaker on, I think, apat na locations yon, right? You were able to join on all 4, I guess. Cebu, Davao, Iloilo, we were there. And then
And
the
BGC.
wrap-up event in BGC, right? In AWS. And the same thing as this year, last August 1st, we had our third DashCon. And Doc, this time, was a keynote speaker. So Doc, when I first encountered your work, you were already the champion for AI, right? But can you tell us about Doc Ligot before AI? What was your work like?
Yeah, but siguro first and foremost, I'm not a doctor. So that's one of the things we need to
I confused
demystify.
you for that as well.
Minsan I don't correct people anymore. But yeah, just out of it's my nickname. I did once considered medicine a long time ago, and then decided that I was just too lazy to go through med school. So I decided to go to accounting. A lot of people don't know that. So I studied business administration and accounting. And then towards the latter part, because that's a 5-year program in UP
Right.
Diliman, towards the last 2 years, again, I got lazy. I decided to skip the accountancy. So I never became a CPA, but I studied accounting a lot. And yeah, I spent pretty much a decade and a half in finance, banking, capital markets. That's where I learned. I keep telling people the killer app when I was coming out of school was Excel. So I had a bootleg
Excel.
Microsoft Excel from Green Hills. I don't know if people know that. And I think that's what made my career. And that's why I'm very bullish about early adopters of any technology. So it was spreadsheets in my time. During my mother's time, it was word processors like WordStar. And then skip forward several decades later, I think now it's Gen AI. So yeah. So after several years in banking, I went into IT. So I worked for an IT company, US IT company, and my last corporate gig was in San Francisco.
Wow.
And really within Silicon Valley. So I was everywhere you go, people pitching everyone startups. that's where that's when the term data scientist started to become popular.
Right.
Yeah, but even years before that, I was already deeply into data. We called it data mining. Once upon a time, databases. I'm a self-taught developer. I did, as I said, I studied accounting. I didn't study comp sci, but I picked that up all through the job. And then in that IT gig, that's when I also started to look into artificial intelligence. No? So this was approximately 10 years ago. So I've been into AI for the past 10 going 11 years. And then after that IT gig, I started my company. Actually, I started two companies pala, which is never a good
Wow, what
idea.
was
Uh, the other company was a fintech. It was called Uploan. So they
I didn't
did,
know this. You had
yeah,
a fintech company.
yeah. I sold out early because I felt
Mm.
I needed to focus. So I had shares, founder shares. So I cashed that in. And then now Uploan's doing well. They're called Savvy now. They were acquired.
Ah,
But I didn't benefit from that acquisition anymore. No, that's long after I left. But then after cashing out, I focused on Cyrolytics. Cyrolytics naman started out as a boutique consultancy slash agency. We were doing outsourced data work for corporates. And then we really got our footing doing training. So that was our sales
right.
funnel, no, as you know. We'll do
Oo.
training, and then people will, we just taught analytics, no? Excel and a little bit of Python. And for the most part, people loved taking it. Remember, this was before the time school started offering mga data science courses. No? In fact, we may have actually birthed it because that was also the inception of the AAP. No? So I was a co-founder
Yeah,
of the analytics and AI, they call it AI Association of the Philippines now. And the mission was, dati kasi when you said analytics, it's a subset of IT. And we
right.
felt that,
Yeah,
oh, there's more to analytics, and now we call it data science. There's more to analytics and data science than programming. You need to understand business. You need to understand insights. So that was our mission. So formed AAP. And then on the Cyrolytics side naman, we were getting bored, believe it or not, of training and consulting. So we felt
How many
na,
years were you doing that
ano lang,
for the
since
training?
we started maybe 3 years, no? Or
Mm,
going on 4. And then we made the decision na maybe it's not really analytics we want to do. Remember how startups are, you're kind of
that's
feeling your
true.
way
Yeah.
through. And then that's when we decided, why don't we join these hackathons? No? Because we've
Yeah.
never done hackathons before. So we joined 2 hackathons. We won them. We didn't expect to win. One was about fake news, break the fake. And then the second was the NASA Space Apps Challenge. And I think that was it. When we joined NASA, remember we had already been 3 years in the business. We got a lot of PR for winning that. We did a dengue detector using AI, really Star Trek kind of stuff. And then, as luck would have it, when we were announced, the lockdown happened. So this 2020. And he
Oh,
said, that's
ouch.
it. Wala na, no more business. But as it turned out, because we did the hackathon, remember this is NASA, no? The NASA.
Yeah,
The
big
the
name.
P the PR was so good, we got into the notice, the radar of the UN. No?
Mm,
So suddenly all these nonprofits started knocking. UN, UNDP, UNICEF, WHO, and we did a lot of work in COVID response, no? Data work. So it's a weird place to find AI and data work. We were doing data science for vaccines, data science for COVID reports. And that's what kept us afloat. And more than afloat, I think that was really our core business. So that's why we call ourselves a social impact AI company. Because although we use AI, we use it for things other than capitalism. although we,
for
although
sure.
don't get me wrong, the money was not bad. No? Because nonprofits have funds, right? They'll pay you, and we were practically the monopoly in that space. And then in come 2022, near current events, we felt we already knew the pandemic was over because our projects were
Right,
not
true.
getting renewed. Oo. And then simultaneously, as we were running down the last few contracts, I signed up to be an early research beta tester of this unknown company called OpenAI. They had this
You what?
weird tool.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. This weird tool called ChatGPT. No one knew about it. And I said, why not? Let's sign up. So this was August, no?
Mm.
GPT-3, di pa 3.5.
Ah,
And then when I saw it, wow, this is amazing. This is better than any NLP tool I've ever seen. And I already had a strong feeling this is going to be a big thing. So that's why when the public release happened November 2022, um, we decided to pivot. So I said we got to get on top of this Gen AI thing. So for the whole time from November up to November 2023 last year, that's when you probably met me. I was all these
Yes.
events,
Yeah.
including DashCon.
Yeah.
I was just trying to evangelize people because it felt like Excel all over again. No? Excel was such a liberating tool. And I said, no, this thing is liberating. And then towards the latter part of last year, that's when I also started doing public courses. Because I said,
Right.
it's taking forever. People can really learn on their own if they wanted to. But
That is true.
unfortunately, some people need a nudge. So I started doing these short 3-hour courses online. And then now, almost another year later, we're now at September 2024. More than 2,000 people have already taken my course,
Wow.
and the response has been very good. No? So I think we're about to hit another pivot a few months from now when suddenly it's the floodgates open, everyone starts adopting AI, and that's perfect for startups like DashoContent because of course you can always do everything yourself. I mean, that's
That
what
is true.
these tools are great. But there are things that you'd rather, rely on experts to do. So I think we're about to get to the next level where companies and startups now start providing services. I'm very excited. So that's the story in a nutshell of Doc
Okay, I
Ligot.
love it. I love how you laid out from the start where you had to pivot from your, I would say, agency or consultancy, doing trainings up until the pandemic, when of course everyone had to rethink where they are in their careers, and then up to 2022 when the big thing happened. And I was surprised that you are actually part of the testers for OpenAI. This is quite interesting. To share as well, November 2022 was when the whole idea of how to build DashoContent moving forward had to also change, right? Like the mindset about it, because connecting brands to talent now has the component of AI. Because people will say, "Hey, what's the role of writers and creatives when I can just generate content through Gen AI, right?"
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that's the probably the reason why within just 2 months, 100 million users came on board ChatGPT because it's like magic, di ba?
Mhm.
Um, any other thoughts when you had that magical moment with ChatGPT? What were your thoughts? I mean, were you thinking about where the humans are headed to?
Yeah, I think honestly, coming from a data mining, data science background, honestly, we never gave AI some serious thought because although neural networks have been around for a while,
Right.
they were kind of to be to really be honest, we never saw them as better than the usual, regression analysis. In
Mm,
fact, they usually perform worse. Now, where my kind of needle moved was it had a lot to do with the kind of data you were processing. So if you were mainly processing, structured Excel sheets, that's really not the place for neural networks. The data is
right.
just too thin. No?
Yeah.
But then when you start processing stuff like text, images, now we're talking, deep learning has a lot of application there. So even I was a disbeliever that AI would go anywhere.
Oh.
And then especially when we started doing the NASA stuff, we had to process satellite data. I said, okay,
Mhm.
this is not going to be handled by your usual statistical tools. Deep learning is there. But even then, we still saw AI is more like a kind of a fringe tool. Yeah, you can detect
Uh-huh.
dengue here or not. It's really not your main bread and butter in terms of your day to day, and that's what made the Gen AI stuff, really interesting because, well, number one, you don't have to be a programmer to use it.
That's
Surprise,
true.
surprise, right? Number two, you don't have to be a mathematician. In fact, math is the worst place to use them. I don't know if you guys talk about that. No? Don't use ChatGPT to solve math problems like the whole strawberry count the number of R's in
Yeah.
strawberry. It's really not the place. Maybe eventually they'll crack it. And then third, the big bottleneck apart from talent in IT has always been the tools. You needed
Mm.
cloud servers, high end chips. But then in this case, although there's some heavy infrastructure behind them, if you're a user, you just need to have an internet connection. If you can connect to Zoom, you can use ChatGPT. So I felt those first three bottlenecks to IT didn't exist for these tools. So that's how I felt that we've already entered a totally new paradigm. And the fact that it's content,
True.
this is such a repeating conversation I have with
Yeah.
companies and CEOs. They say, can you give me use cases for Gen AI? I tell them,
Still ask that.
yeah, content creation, and
Right.
content analysis. So it's all content, pictures. And
Mm.
you can see their faces are like, okay, so why is that important? So if people miss it because they're used to I call them all of these galactic use cases where you're gonna optimize revenue, reduce cost,
Yeah, that one.
eh,
That's expectation for
you're
sure.
gonna do
Yeah.
forecasting, fraud detection. And I said, those are old use cases. You go back to the traditional AI for that. But for this, it's content. But then I think you're missing the what's staring in the face.
Mm.
90% or more of your day-to-day work is content.
Agree.
Emails, reports. So imagine if you can do what used to take hours can take minutes, what used to take days can take hours. That's real cost savings. And I think that's still the blind spot. Something that I'm sure you guys are thinking about
Yeah,
when you say we're going to do marketing automation using AI, people don't immediately see the reality that,
that
oh
is
my
true.
gosh, we spend a lot of time on marketers and and
Or budget. Uh-oh.
green lighting advertising, no? So this thing you can do iterations on your creatives, on your copy on a click. People don't realize it yet, but some have. The people who have taken my courses instantly see it, and I think slowly but surely people are going to start seeing that this is going to be the game changer.
So cost saving, speed, and efficiency, that's the benefit of exploring Gen AI. And I agree with you. Some of the CEOs are giving us really hard time with what are the use cases for Gen AI. Like, why should I care? Diba? And until you answer that question, they won't even bother giving any ideas to their team on using AI. But for us internally sa Dasho, I've been an advocate of course, Gen AI ever since ChatGPT came into the surface. And I know my team here would also geek out. I even require them to have at least one tool, one AI tool that they are familiar with to
To
help them.
use. Mhm.
Yes, to help them and use it. Um, but so far, with other organizations that you have possibly talked to or worked with, what's their blind spot with Gen AI at this point? Like aside from not knowing what the use cases are, what are some blind spots that you're
Yeah.
seeing?
So it's like parang layers of the onion. The more you
Yeah.
peel the onion, the more maluluha ka. So so the top layer is the misconception.
Right.
I need to be an IT, I need to be a programmer, I need to be a mathematician. That's layer one.
Yeah.
So that's the first set of objections. In fact, the most interesting objection there is I need to have good, clean data. Because that's how we used to advocate analytics.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
clean your data first, do data warehousing.
Yeah.
Those are all irrelevant for Gen AI. So
Really?
once you're past that, in fact, Gen AI can create data, no, that you
Yeah.
can use,
Synthetic.
or clean the data you have, no, as we discussed with Janet in another
Mm.
talk. No? So that's level one. Level two, yan na, use case. What's the use cases? What's the ROI? And the funny thing about ROI is every time you get into let's some IT project, it's all cost.
Yeah.
You buy hardware, licenses, you hire people. So there is no ROI there. And I tell them point blank, what have you guys been doing? Oh, yeah, we invested in this and that, we hired that. That's all cost. There's no ROI
Yeah.
there. And they start looking at me funny, Like, oh, the ROI happens when you change something. You
Mm.
stop doing a bad process, you speed it up, or you start doing a good process. That's the ROI. And that's what Gen AI does out of the box. It's actually a
Mhm.
process
Mhm.
improvement tool for content. So yun layer 2. Then layer 3 na is what about, hallucinations? What about prompting? What
Yeah.
about security? And it's the same issue we had when cloud was in early stages of adoption. People didn't
Mm.
want to go on Amazon because what about security?
Right.
And the way we handled objections, because that was part of my training when I was in IT, is do you think your data center is more secure than Amazon's data center? So are you saying your security people are better than the people in Silicon Valley? Yeah, they could be,
And then
but
big tech. Mm-mm.
unlikely, So I think the same thing can eventually apply to AI. Ironically, maybe people will get triggered by what I'm gonna say. Some of the most rabid objections to Gen AI actually come from developers and data scientists themselves. because
Bakit ba?
I think it has to do with, hey, I trained for years to learn all of this
Right.
coding stuff. You're too married to the process, and you
Oh
can't
my
see that
gosh.
in front of you is already a way of doing it faster. It does not make you any less of a developer to use AI to help you code or to use AI to help you analyze. But we're too in
Right.
love with it. Yeah, you can see a lot of the
Oh,
articles and posts. The first people to point out the errors of AI are these tech people. And for me, maybe it's fortunate that I didn't come from a tech background initially. So I kind of look at it at face value and say, hey, look, I can code, but I hate it. If I
mhm.
can do it faster,
Same.
then I'll do it. And then so yeah, level 3. Level 4, this is the most abstract because one of the first things we started doing last year was in integrating AI into non-techie work. And one of the most interesting areas that I found it useful is in planning. So you
Mm,
know how you have these design thinking, strategic planning, risk management planning, and any work where you have to put post-its on a wall.
brainstorm. Oo.
So apparently AI is one of the best ways of accelerating that because instead of scratching your heads thinking of possible things to do and design thinking, you can use AI for design thinking and that speeds up the output. And people are pleasantly surprised na, pwede pala yun. Because they're kind of used to looking at AI, taking orders. AI do this or AI do that. But then once you start flipping it around and you ask AI, what should I do?
Mm,
Or AI, how should I think about this? And then the chatbot gives you suggestions. It's like magic. This is the real
right.
magic. Your brain starts unlocking. And you may not even follow what AI initially said, but because of what you read from the discussion, have a conversation with AI, you think of something totally different than what you had before. I think that's really the deepest level of integration where AI can now basically run your strategy. Kaya nga everyone's looking forward to a completely automated company. I don't
Oh
know
my
if
gosh.
I'm 100% there in terms of principle, but certainly all your planning and finance and marketing people should have AI assistants. Otherwise,
Agree, agree.
sayang eh, sayang. It's like jumping off a plane without a parachute. 'Di ba?
Oo.
Parang if you don't have a backup, you're gonna go straight down, no? And it's gonna be hard to recover.
That's what we're trying to do also internally. Kaya nga the other day, I don't know if the team noticed, but I made an AI avatar that discusses how to use the tool that I created. So I created
Mhm.
a brand bot so that everything they need to know about DashoContent, the culture, our products, solutions, everything, they can just chat the bot and ask the bot what's in store in your memory because I want to know more about Dasho. And then from there, they can start creating the content that we need, just for internal marketing, for our manuals and all of that. But yeah, I agree with you. It has to start somewhere. And I guess brands should jump off the fact that, it's here and they just need to explore. And I agree with what Roland here said na for artists and creatives, there's so much backlash and objection. In fact, I saw a group that's AI against artists. Have you seen groups like this as
Baliktad,
well?
artist against AI.
Artists, sorry, not AI against artists against AI, sorry. Oh, artists against AI. So I follow that group. Parang I just want to know what, the artists think about Gen AI. And there's a lot of parang angles that I agree with them. Do you agree with the artists, you know?
I think if I summarize, and of course, I don't want to oversimplify, there's at least two issues. One has to do with livelihood.
Yeah.
Kasi nga, if you used to be a logo maker, everyone's making logos, wala na, no revenue. And the other is kind of a bit more subtle. It's similar to the backlash from the tech people
Mm.
that i- is it really still human if it's AI that is it really still art if you prompt a photo or you prompt a painting? And for me, the first part really needs to get addressed over and on top of whatever technology, the labor problem.
Yeah.
But it's always a symptom of what we call industrial revolutions. No, once upon a time, people were losing their livelihood. I kind of compare it to the emergence of photography. A lot of people don't know this, but photography was rejected by art for 100 years when it came out. And the main issue there, a couple of things, but the main one was it's so easy. You pull a string or now push a button and suddenly you have an image. And it removed the struggle. Now I got
Uh,
questioned by an art professor a couple of months back. They said, if there's no struggle, is it still art? And again, I said, I can't question your process. If you feel that you need to struggle to create art, that's on you. But I will question your productivity. So all throughout this struggle, exactly how much art are you producing and can you live off it? And now people are here. But actually, that's not even the main point. When the art world started to accept photography, something happened. No? And you guys can look at the art history. No? Up until the emergence of art, which is roughly panahon ni Rizal, no? 19th century. If you look at all the art up to that point, Michelangelo, Leonardo, Rembrandt, parang they were painting photographs. Parang all the artists wanted to capture reality as
Yeah.
much as possible. Uh, and then, nung natanggap na yung photography, art became abstract. Salvador Dali, Picasso, faces started getting deformed. Suddenly, splotches of paint on a wall, art na
It's now
yon.
art.
Yeah. So I feel that it's as if the artist said, you know what, we're never gonna be more realistic than a picture. Bigay mo na yan sa photographs, no? We're gonna do something else. So I feel that that's kind of very hopeful because right now we're rebelling against machines who are starting to do what we do. But then if you look at photography, we will eventually do something else, no? Let the AI do that. In fact, photography had parang a part two when digital photography started to come out. The hardcore photographers hated it. They hated Photoshop. They hated, Fuji cameras. Pero you can't beat the economics eh. You don't have to burn a comfort room in your house to turn it into a developing
Yeah.
studio. You don't have to buy film and risk it getting exposed. If you don't like a photo, just delete it. And instead of just, I don't know how many shots was a film dati, parang 30 or something like that, 30 or 20 shots lang. Dito, you can take 200 shots in one click. You can't beat that kind of productivity. And I feel that the art, and not all artists are against AI. There are actually a number of progressive artists already are embracing it. It will really just be a question of photography. Now, I won't necessarily say AI has to be there for art to happen, especially if you're kind of a performance artist or activist artist. That'll be a different issue altogether. You want to express something, and then there are also media that are AI hasn't sufficiently infested, like sculpture, although merong 3D printing. But I think
No.
eventually it will just be, oh, you want to do this, use this tool, and it's still the artist's vision that comes out. I feel that
Right.
that's where we're headed.
So it should be the skilled artists first, their work first, before you add any Gen AI, which I guess one of our participants here, Sir Roland, also agrees with. No, so democratizing graphics design as a skill, first stage, and then Gen AI, second stage. Now that's for the artist. Now, story. Recently I saw on X that Klarna, I don't know if you've seen that news, but they already stopped their subscription to a lot of B2B SaaS tools.
Ah,
No?
really? Like Canva?
Oo. Yeah, not Canva. Salesforce. They
Ah, okay.
stopped Salesforce. They stopped, I think, a project management tool, something that they're using internally, not just a CRM. So they said that with the existence of AI agents at the moment, like let's say for example, a coding co-pilot, no, B2B SaaS is just going to also go away because organizations can just build their own tools internal using AI engineer. Do you see this as a skill that people can possibly upskill to? Like, let's say, for example, AI takes over creative work like
Mm,
content
mm,
and,
mm.
graphics. So is this something that people should prepare for, like become an AI engineer or a prompt engineer?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, but it has to be a bit more nuanced. Kasi
Mhm.
if people are familiar with something called the diffusion of innovation, if you're not, look it up. It's a framework that predates AI that um, there are 5 types of people in any market for any new thing. You have innovators who invent stuff. You have the early adopters. Then you have early and late majority, and then you have the laggards. Now, the diffusion of innovation is an interesting framework because it shows to the extent a market can adopt something new before it
Yeah.
gets difficult. Kasi the innovators, which is about 5%, they're the visionaries.
Yeah.
Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they fail. But then
Agree.
let's say they succeed, the early adopters are quickly to follow. So between the two of them, that's about 15% of the market. But before you get to early adoption, early majority, things need to be repackaged. In other words, the early majority think differently from the early adopters. They're still positive, but they're more skeptical. And then the late majority and the laggards, they'll never adopt it until they're forced to do it. We actually use this framework, incidentally, just to share during the pandemic, because we were working with UNDP and WHO on vaccine adoption. As you
Right.
know, there are people who are afraid of vaccines. There's a lot of anti-vax stuff. And then now we heard ano pa nga, conspiracy theory that the CIA pala poisoned the public opinion against Sinovac, yung mga ganyan. So, that was the environment. And we said, okay, why don't we measure using the diffusion of innovation curve, what people think. And it was fascinating because we did a bit of surveys using Pulse Asia, did a bit of clustering, did a bit of regression, and they really lined up. So the people who are already vaccinated and the ones who are lining up, they're the early adopters. They kind of get it. If I want to continue working, I need to get vaccinated. You don't have to convince them. The early majority were willing, but they were either in areas that had no vaccines, walang supply,
Oh,
or
yeah.
second, they were skeptical about the government,
Mm.
because they thought corruption lang to and all that. So that's
Yeah.
an example na when you try to, get people to adopt something, you need to address these things first. So when going back to your question, prompt engineering, I still hear people kind of condemn it. Oh, it's useless. It's not really engineering. But the ones who have already adopted it, they get it. And they're the ones getting better output from AI. Now, for early majority, they may not necessarily be the types who would adopt prompt engineering unless we give them a convenient way of either learning it or using it. And I think that's where the SaaS companies can come in, because maybe the early majority wants to use AI, but they're not willing to get into the nitty-gritty of it. And if you think about it, prompting is not even nitty-gritty. It's writing English
Yeah.
sentences. But that's very alien to the early majority. And then you have the late majority and the laggards. Maybe you add the rabid artists and everyone else there. They have more philosophical reasons to say no to AI. And they probably will not adopt it until much later when wala nang option. You have to do it.
It's too late na. It's
So
required.
nutshell, yes, we should learn it, but it depends on where you sit in that curve. No, I think fortune favors the bold. I'll just use myself as an example. I had a bootlegged Excel. I was an early adopter. Everyone was happy with columnar pads and adding machines, and I carved out a pretty successful career in banking, for 14 years almost, based on that
With one
alone.
tool. Oh,
Yeah.
diba?
Of course, I had to learn other stuff, interest
course.
rates, macroeconomics, pero I think it was the spreadsheet that made it for me. And because of spreadsheets, I got into databases. Because of databases, I got into coding. And then now I'm into AI. So talagang you can't predict looking forward. You can only look backward and see what you did. Diba?
Yeah. So it's the expansion of your interests. Maybe there's Gen Zs here who are expanding their career. They start with just Chat GPT, and then, eventually it will expand towards other interests, encompassing the whole computer science, computer engineering space. Doc, since we're talking about adoption, and I know you've written articles about this as well, where are we? Like the Philippines, we're talking about the Philippines here and the Filipinos. Where is the Philippines in the whole adoption spectrum?
There's a lot of conflicting reports, and I find that interesting. One set of reports say we're behind. Our infrastructure is not there. Our human capital, our PISA scores are down. So you can't expect Philippines to lead in AI. And then another set, particularly LinkedIn, was the most recent. LinkedIn said 86% of Filipinos on LinkedIn, which is also a subset, are already using AI. And that's ahead of 75%. And then there were others, parang surveys last year that show us as number 1 in interest and number 4 in traffic.
Right.
So I think it's a mixed bag. And I think it's the B2C versus B2B phenomena. I think B2C, there's a lot of willingness, and you're just limited by, I guess, knowledge. If you don't know what to do, then you won't use it. But the moment you learn, you'll use it immediately, 100%. Kasi you feel the impact agad. But for B2B, there are other, I would say, baggages to overcome, like privacy, security.
Yes.
There's a lot of legacy systems that you have to integrate with. It's not easy, no? And I love quoting yung figure ni McKinsey, no? They have this, it used to be 69, pero NSFW, so 70 na.
Around,
70%,
oh, okay.
they rounded it up. 70% of digitization projects end in failure. That's a
Mm.
massive failure
Ouch.
rate. And you know
It's
why?
huge.
It's not because of tech. It's because of skills. It's because of leadership, or the vision isn't clear. And if there's any IT people listening to this who's been in their job for at least 10 years, you would have seen many IT projects last too long that usually the people on top of it end up moving on, getting fired, or finding another job. So it's really more of a human problem rather than a tech problem, diba? And let's also face the facts. Every time you have I think the popular term before was digital transformation. Depending on who's running it, it can be a nightmare for a company because it means destroying existing process, which
That
may
is
not
true.
be perfect,
Yeah.
pero it worked. And then people losing jobs, there's a lot of trauma associated with it. 70%. So for me, I use that as my inspiration na if 70% end in failure, what do the 30% do? Probably not what everyone else is saying. Kaya when I see a lot of, this is just me thinking out loud. Might be a fallacy. But when I hear people giving advice about, oh, you should study this, or take that degree, and, here are the top 5 steps you need to take
Yeah.
to transform your
Yeah.
company. That's the 70% because that's the conventional wisdom. You gotta buck the trend, do something different. And especially startups. Startups cannot follow the same advice that big companies do. It just
Agree.
doesn't work for startups. You have to think differently. Kaya ganon. So I feel that that's the challenge. Adoption is high individual, pero institutional is quite low. Lalo na in government, lalo na in schools. They're really the last to adopt these things.
But so far, Doc, like you've been out there, you've talked to like people in leadership, leaders, not just in big companies, but also in government. Like, where is everyone headed towards AI? How is everyone thinking about this? Are they like headless chickens trying to figure out what to do with AI? I mean,
Well,
it's a different story for marketing, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
but what
think
do you
there
see?
ang daming angles eh. One angle, and I just came from a working group, no?
Yeah,
The joint cybersecurity working group. So this is like USAID, US Embassy
yeah.
funded this. One angle is everyone's trying to kind of put some rules around AI without first understanding it.
Ouch. Na naman,
That's the reality.
policies. Oh my
Oo.
gosh.
So I'll use cyber as the easy target. It's also because they're the most notorious. So they're trying to impose rules on AI from a cyber standpoint, not
What?
realizing that AI tech doesn't behave the same way as the other types of tech. Number one, you deal with probabilities. So it doesn't matter how you secure data. In fact, the more you secure the data, the harder AI will be to police because AI
Yeah.
needs a lot of data. So there's already an inherent conflict there. And when you say cybersecurity, usually the emphasis is to prevent outsiders from getting inside the company to cause mayhem, diba? But when AI, the threat is not outside. The threat is inside. The threat is
Yeah.
your model. The threat is your data. And again, I'm just using them as an example. Cyber people don't know how to think about that. In general, no. They only know how to secure a database, update your password, multi-factor authentication, firewalls, but they wouldn't know how to diagnose a malfunctioning algorithm. It's just because they don't
Imagine
study
that.
that, no.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel that we need to first educate everyone, including policymakers, about how this stuff works. Now, there's a double-edged blade then. Okay lang if it was all bad, like a DDoS attack is bad. So if you stop DDoS attacks, good.
Everything is good.
But if you stop AI, yes, you might not suffer the risks, but you lose out on innovation.
Exactly.
So it's actually an opportunity loss. So the better you do your job as a privacy and security practitioner, the worse it is for your company. That means huli ka na sa laban. And I've seen
Yeah.
many companies, big names, popular names, they can't
Name
innovate.
them, joke.
Saka na, baka maging kliyente mo pa, no? They can't move forward because they're using these tried and tested methods. But guess what? AI is the threat to tried and tested methods. People are gonna rip everyone
Yeah,
a new hole where the sun don't shine if they don't figure it out. So I
agree.
think that's the problem that we need to surmount. Parang, and aminado yung mga tao, like I'm in the AI safety panel. One of
Yeah.
the biggest risks highlighted by the panel was it's too complicated for
Come
most
on.
people. Yeah. So you don't know what's going right or wrong. Like if suddenly AI starts talking like, sentient AGI, you didn't know how it worked. But I'm also one of the skeptics about AGI for now because I feel that there's also a lot of hype. I feel that you either, kasi if you talk to people, they either think AI is too dumb or AI will kill us. No, I think the middle ground is the better
Extremes.
place.
Oh,
Where no, it's not dumb, it's smart, but it won't kill us unless another human uses AI to do so. So it's really
yeah.
humans that are the risk, not really AI.
Yeah. So going back to, kasi we need to talk about content operations and, how the marketing department is seeing how to use AI now. Definitely on the cost side, AI will help you with speed and efficiency. Resource allocation as well. Instead of hiring too many people, too many heads, you just bring it out to one tool that you subscribe to and let one person use it to optimize some of their tasks. But I've talked to agency owners as well. Sabi nila, oh, I agree with you. Sasabihin talaga nila, AI is too complicated for me to wrap my head around. I don't have the bandwidth yet to think about AI. And I think I have to prioritize my operations, my cash flow instead of thinking about AI. But then when you go granular, when you check at how they're operating right now, you can actually suggest a lot of ways that they can use AI. For example, just using, as basic as Perplexity for research,
Mhm.
diba? Or ChatGPT to create some sort of GPT bot for them to use for their staff. So optimizations like this, little things that you can do can create big ripples of effect for your company. What are other things that you think marketing department should look into when using artificial intelligence and LLM, Doc?
Yeah, the way I try to explain it, you start first with the bottom. Can you do things faster? That's the first.
Yeah.
Can you do more things? When you say more things, creatives hate it when I say it, but creativity is really repurposing, patterns you've seen in the past. No, actually, there was a question nga on how do you contend with AI stealing ideas or repurposing. But if you look at any art, number one, this is George Lucas talking. There is no art without technology. Any
Mm.
art is based on technology, and there's
Mhm.
no art. To Steve Jobs naman, 'di ba? Great artists steal. What he meant about
Ouch.
that, really, I'm not justifying the stealing, but every creative effort is based on a pattern you've seen before. And if you think
Mm.
you're being original, sorry to say it, most people who think they're original are not. It's just your spin on it. I think nga music, we talked about photography earlier. I think music should be our inspiration here. Like there's only 88 keys in the piano. There's only so many chords. And yet on the basis of these finite patterns, unlimited work has been generated.
True. Yep.
'Di ba? And 'di ba when they say I'm gonna do a cover, you literally rip off someone else's song, you do your own spin on it, and you're now a cover artist. You didn't necessarily steal it, but someone's work was the basis for your work. In software development, it's even worse or
That's
better.
true.
We just rip off code in GitHub, repurpose it, and then there you go. And developers actually don't mind. So I think yun yung levels na if we're too hung up on originality and to the extent that you can
Right.
really be original, that's I think a roadblock to productivity. Okay, so
Right.
yun, productivity, creativity. The third is knowledge. When I say knowledge, it's about finding a way to efficiently retrieve stuff that you pretty much have done or
Yes.
already know.
Agree.
And for me, like when RAG became popular, I think that's really the use case for most people. It's
Mm-mm.
about letting the AI retrieve whatever is already there, whether it's documents, images, data, at a click. And that's massive because let's face it, if you're in an average company, it takes forever to retrieve anything na, oh, remember what we did in project X, blah 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 for client Y, diba? And your people are scrambling around to dig up the archives or
Yes. The
look for
reports.
look for the plates. Ito AI can retrieve immediately. So can you
Ligot.
add if you add those three things, what kind of a company are you? You're going to be the company that completely dominates an industry kasi you've got that ability. Now, to be fair, yun naman yung promise of old school stuff like data
Yeah.
mining and data warehousing. But it was very expensive to do that. No, only the biggest companies can invest in. Parang yung Meltwater, that's a very popular
Yeah,
tool.
yeah, yeah.
Ang mahal,
True.
di ba?
Mm-mm.
But now you have the equivalent of what these tools can do, but in LLMs, no, and diffusion models, you're now leveling the playing field. So I feel that's where you should start. Is there anything that's taking too long? Or do you find yourself running out of ideas? Or do you might have past ideas and you're just struggling to dig them up?
Retrieve
Because
it. Mm.
yeah, because you're already wala na, the competition's too fast. That's where it will really make a big difference. Now, where that can come to marketing, pretty much everything in marketing is productivity and creativity and
So,
knowledge, di ba?
yeah.
Like templating, di ba?
Yeah.
Puro templates naman yan. Like I used to do a lot of web development. It's always the first time before WordPress. It's always the first website that you struggle with. Once you have
True.
a template, andali na. You tweak
Ina, oh.
this, change the color of the button, blah, blah, blah. And then voila, you're now a massive web development machine. Now everyone can just write a prompt and it will create a website for you. Di ba? May mga tools na
Yun
na
nga,
ganun.
yeah.
Yeah,
Same
yeah.
with, I guess same with marketing. And when you said templates, it's the same, diba? Like in content creation, you have like content strategy, the content plan, the calendar, everything can already be templated. And then up until the execution, even the you know, the layouts themselves, they can be templated and then added in the speed and efficiency of AI. You can create like hundreds of content in just one click. And it's true. I want to go to our questions from our participants for today. Actually, we didn't expect that we will have participants for this podcast
No, I
episode.
think it's better.
But of course,
We
it's
have
up. You know,
uh
people want to hear about you. Maybe we can go through some of the questions here. And if you have more, do add in or type in your questions. So I have Ina here. I'll start with Ina. She asked, what are your thoughts about the allegedly stealing of artworks, feeding it to AI, and AI showing these artworks with their signatures, right? And then considering it as AI work.
So I've been in that debate since ano pa, no? The dawn of this Gen AI. So there's three things we should all consider. Number one, copyright law is very specific. Kunyari, I take a painting that Claire made and resell it without her permission. That's copyright infringement. Now, there is such a thing as derivative work. Like, I saw Flair's
Yeah.
painting and I come up with my own version of it, parang
Yeah,
cover.
inspired.
Oo. That's not infringement. Now, however, depending on the nature of the copyright, you might still have to pay Flair or ask permission. Then there's the third, where if we use a model that doesn't reproduce the exact artwork, but it's the style of the artwork. And this is where prompts like, give me a Filipina CEO's portrait in the style of Juan Luna. I mean, literally the name of the artist. And that's a prompt. That's, I think, in the gray zone because
Yeah.
you're literally using someone else's style. So I think the missing link there, it's not so much the ability to reproduce a style because you can't copyright a style pala. Surprise,
Yeah.
surprise. No? You can copyright a work based on a style. But the style, I mean, you can't copyright pointillism, di ba? Yung ganun. There has to be a structure to provide the original artist some form of compensation. It's the same manner like 11 Labs, yung voices,
Yeah.
di ba? If I record your voice and then use it in my in my creative, I'm literally stealing your voice. But then the solution shouldn't be to prevent people from doing that. Solution should be, well, if Flair's voice is so nice and she should be able to license it. And that
Incentivize.
and yeah, voice actors are another blatantly rabid against AI because of
Yeah.
the
True.
tools, no? So the term stealing, I think, has many nuances. And kaya nga, sabi ni Steve Jobs, the best artists steal. It's about building on top of what another person's work. It's not reproducing original work and selling it as your own. No, there's a fine line there, and I think we will continue to have more of these issues. Lalo na ngayon na the economic damage to an artist's revenue is really massive. Just like once upon a
Agree.
time, photography was being condemned by the portraiture sector. Those who are making portraits.
Yeah.
They were angry at photographs na parang wala na kaming client. People would rather just take a photo, lalo na nung naging colored. And then
Yeah.
what happened now? If you go to a mall or an art shop and you want to have
Yeah.
a painting of you made, they ask for a photo. So eventually, nag-converge din siya.
Oo.
Kasi nga, productivity. It doesn't make sense to ask someone to sit in a studio for hours just so I can get the shape of his nose. I can just get a photo,
And
di ba?
don't move. Stay
Oo,
still. Oh gosh.
nagpapawisan ka doon and all that. This is back in the 19th century. So I feel we're gonna see that moment where there will be a convergence, but we have to agree also on rules to protect artists. And then this is not even covering the malicious uses na, like, deep fakes. I found nga, I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook. I found an 1800s article. The early deepfakes, they were literally taking photos of famous women and putting
Oh,
their faces on nude bodies. So
what's
the
that? That's the
so,
old school.
so the temptation to do that pre-existed, predated AI. The technology just got better and better. So I feel na we can't condemn AI for that. Yeah, you condemn the people doing that. No, it's really the use of the tech that's really a problem.
Sige. I'll ask this second to the last question before we wrap up. From Roland again. What specific system do you see that will safeguard content created in photos or videos? Or maybe like an auditor? How would you know if it's AI or not AI?
So I made a point earlier this morning, and I'll try to post it online. It's one thing to do an inference, call it inference AI, diba? So you make a prediction. And it's another thing to publish. I think that's where the issue is. Before you can publish something, if it ends up violating some intellectual property, then there should be a mechanism to maintain it. Unfortunately, that kind of power is left to the likes of OpenAI and I guess Facebook as
Yeah.
a platform. They should be the venue to enforce all of these standards. If they don't cooperate, then there's no stopping anyone. It's like once upon a time, 'di ba, nung DVD era, if you guys remember, there was this region coding, region 1,
Yeah, I
region 2,
remember
region
that.
3.
Yeah.
And the whole point of that was to prevent piracy. But
Mm.
it was such a poorly conceived solution because eventually multi-region players got popular, nullifying the
The
standard.
coding. Mm.
Oh, so yun, that's the opposite of what should happen. Kasi the point of publication and consumption is the producer of the player. So if they all sana agreed not to recognize multi-region discs, then maybe it would have curbed piracy. But, di ba? You can't force them if they're gonna make less money. So I feel that's where the point of intervention should be, and maybe government should sanction the platform for allowing that. Again, there's no universally acknowledged basis yet. Like for example, in the same month that the EU AI Act inserted copyright provision, the same
Mm.
month last year, Japan said, and I think this is still the case, AI is not subject to copyright in Japan.
Right.
No, kasi they thought it's hopeless to manage it. Let's just make it
Yeah.
exempt para wala nang problema. But then that pissed off a lot of Japanese artists, as you can
Yeah.
imagine, no? Pero yun na nga you gotta find the kind of the root of the behavior. And maybe the point here is parang yung ginawa ni Steve Jobs with the iTunes. 'Di ba? The music studios were all angry at him kasi
Yeah.
why are you selling songs for $1? 'Di ba parang ganun? And he said, you know what? People are already pirating your songs with Napster and Kazaa and you might as well earn $1. And then now, the iTunes ecosystem is a multi-billion dollar part of the music industry. So I think may ganung intervention, but it had to happen at the platform level. So it was Apple that enforced that. And all of the producers started playing ball, no? And we also have to be worried then there are also some abusive copyright hunters, no? Parang yung mga patent trolls, no? They create all sorts of weird patents, and then if they find that your company supposedly violates a patent, they'll slap a suit against you. So there's predatory intellectual property enforcers, no? So we
Mm.
also have to consider that it's not a one-way street.
For sure. Sige. Now, to wrap up, and I know this was part of our promise to our viewers and listeners that we will touch on deepfake. So I'll put this in the column of wicked thoughts by Doc Ligot. What
Oo.
is your wicked thoughts about deepfake, especially that there's a coming election? How are other countries mitigating the deepfakes? How should we prepare for it? Ang daming questions, no?
Oo
But
nga.
where do you think this will take us now that, it exists?
Several thoughts about deepfakes. I think we should, although eventually it might be solved, right now there's no effective way of detecting a deepfake. In the same way, there's no effective way of detecting a chatbot's output.
Yeah.
Talagang hindi. And the reason for this, and happy to be corrected, it's in the math. The usual way of detecting a fake is through anomalies. No? So let's say you have a data distribution. Kunyari, a picture will have a natural distribution of colors and pixels. And then you edit some pixels. Lilitaw talaga yon as an odd thing because it
Yeah.
doesn't follow the distribution. So, ma-highlight yan. But then when you create a completely original, quote unquote, original image from AI, by definition, it follows the distribution of the original. And that's why AI generated art, GANs, deepfakes have always been historically difficult to detect. Even words, no?
Yeah.
It will follow the training data. So I feel that using that approach is imperfect and many people are still trying it. Parang let's label fakes and not fakes and then see if the AI can tell the difference. I feel it will require a different type of data. Maybe it's the subject matter, maybe it's the context, maybe it's the publisher, but that's still a work in progress. I would rather give people some literacy. Yung problema kasi ngayon with the deepfakes, once you spot it, report it, it's taken down agad. So people
Oh.
forget how the deepfake look like. And there is a theory. Kanina we talked about diffusion of innovation. Ngayon, let's talk about inoculation theory. It's another theory where it's also media. If you see enough of a phenomena, it gives you the parang intuition to detect it in the future. Para kang may antibodies on that.
Yeah.
So my
For
suggestion
sure.
at the moment is to show as many deepfakes as possible within a controlled environment siguro na no one gets sued. So that people see na, okay, ganito pala yun when there's a lip sync or a face swap or a
Oo.
totally new avatar. And let's also find out that there are benign uses of deepfakes, like creative uses, and there's also malicious, which usually involves scams or politics or reputational, like the infamous Polvoron video. You know already na it's suspicious. Why would such a video exist? What would be the intent behind that video? Whether it was a fake video or not, you gotta question it already, and then releasing it shortly before the State of the Nation, mga ganyan. So I feel that that's where we should head. Unfortunately, so far, until we started, no one has heeded my call to do a massive deepfake, literacy campaign. And we can't rely on technology to police itself. It will have
Yeah.
to be us. In fact, I'm more worried if a law, kasi there's a pending deepfake law that gets passed.
In
And
the
then we don't,
Philippines.
yeah, si
Oh.
Villafuerte filed it just
Mm.
last month. Pero if you don't have effective ways of detecting them, can you see how that law might be abused? Parang everyone's going to accuse everyone of being a deepfake and there's no way to prove otherwise.
Yeah.
Then it becomes opinionated na lang. And that's where the law pala is kind of faulty for me. If any lawyers listening, under the rules of evidence, one of the highest evidence is a testimony by someone, a vetted witness. So you're relying on someone's opinion
Yeah.
to become
Narrative.
fact.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so flaky minsan, no? Cases are decided on the opinion of someone. Hindi mo pala alam, invento lang pala yun. And a lot of effort is on destroying the credibility of the witness. That's why lawyers earn a lot of money. That's what they do. They attack people. Samantalang in science, it's data that's evidence. In the law, that's circumstantial. An expert has to validate the data. Diba? It's kind of medieval. But
Oh.
again, it's a work in progress. Eventually, AI will also affect law. It's another
AI
subject.
lawyers.
Yeah, it can happen. Yeah.
Definitely. It exists now in the US for sure.
Yeah.
And I know, Doc, may coming na masterclass. We're gonna discuss more of these things that we're talking about and eventually teach these guys how to actually do prompt engineering. Would you wanna talk about that and possibly invite them?
Yeah, on the 26th of September, we're gonna have a half-day session. It's gonna start, ano ba tayo, 1 or 2, in the afternoon. I'll be joined by, of course, Flair and then Janet Toral. We're going to give you 3 complementary views because this is stuff we already do for ourselves. So my section will be about, of course, prompting for content, which probably will parallel the other 2. But then, based on our more recent discussion, I'll also be sharing how you can leverage this for for marketing, for advertising. Because I
Yes.
feel that being an advertiser myself, small
Right.
business, I feel that that's one of the biggest gaps of other small business people. Like I hear a lot of people complain about Facebook ads, that it's not successful for them. So there is an art to it, technically, and
Oo.
it's still a tool and it uses machine learning. So I find that Gen AI is perfect for online ads because it allows you to create variations of your copy, and that's all it. That's almost the secret sauce. If you can figure out the right hook, the right content, the right creative that will appeal to your audience, and you do it at a level that more than what your competitors are doing, it's almost a guaranteed success. So I'm going to be looking forward to sharing that during the
Yun.
masterclass.
Thank you, Doc. And I'm highlighting here on the screen our DashCon Masterclass, Generative AI for Marketing and Content Operations. So again, that's September 26, 1 to 5 p.m. That will be in Workable by Robinson's Land. That's in Makati. So we do have limited slots. Right now, we have 2-for-1 deal. So hopefully you can join us. Of course, Doc will be there. The mentors are myself, Miss Janet, and of course Doc here. So in case you guys know marketing teams that need help, especially with their operations and their content production, scaling up using AI, ayun, this class would be perfect for you. So to wrap it up, Doc, I want to hear from you what your plans are, where Cyrolytics is heading, any exciting other events aside from the masterclass that's coming for you, Doc Ligot.
Well, we're coming at year end ulit, and usually by this time, we kind of lie low on actively on events. So after our September masterclass, there may still be one or two, but nothing major until early next year. But where we are now is when we started embarking on this journey in 2022, we didn't know what to expect. Now I think we have a fairly good idea where the pain points are, and we're not going to solve all the pain points, but one of the pain points that I want to solve is the early adoption curve. I don't think we've hit early adopter just yet, despite LinkedIn's declaration. So I feel there's still a lot to grow. And so my focus will be how to get as many people as possible, not necessarily the techies, they can take care of
Yeah.
themselves, but more of the users, the marketers, the small business people. And as I'm sure some of you know, my emphasis has always been outside Metro Manila. So if you're based in Metro Manila, you will barely hear about what I do. That's where I rely on Flair and the other partners. No, we can do Metro Manila together. Pero my activities will be increasingly outside. So the standouts are Region 4, Region 6 and 7, so Iloilo, Cebu.
Yep.
And then we might start penetrating Northern Luzon na, so Pampanga and up, because there's also a massive market there. I think we really need to democratize access to this. I mean, everyone can already log on, but in terms of learning, there's not much happening outside from my perspective. And then maybe that's where working with the government, although I hesitate to do too many things with government. It tends to take up a lot of time too.
For
But
sure.
schools, certainly, if anyone from a school is listening and you want to pilot something, I'm more than happy to come to your school. I've already done a lot of talks in schools just in the last 2 months. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that.
Okay, so that's Doc Ligot. Reach out to him. He's always online on social. He has his social media profiles if you need to reach out to him and ask him questions about AI. He's pretty much generous. Again, he's the AI messiah of the Philippines. So no crucifixion, don't worry, but definitely
Walang
your
passion.
champion. You are definitely the champion of our AI literacy advocacy as well here at DashoContent. So thank you for this opportunity to interview you at our podcast here at Wicked Thoughts and Dash Ed. So thank you so much and see you again soon.
Thank you, guys.
And that was the latest episode of Wicked Thoughts. Make sure to subscribe and join the host on The Wicked at thewckd.com. Thank you to our sponsors, the company Cebu, Third Team Media, Dasho Work, Dasho AI, and DashoContent, a content team for your marketing department. Tune in for more wicked conversations right here at Wicked Thoughts.